Ever feel like you're doing this teaching thing alone? You don't have to be. Shared teaching is all about sharing the workload through the power of collaboration and teamwork. Together, we'll walk through all the difficult parts of teaching and learn how to streamline our processes, fine-tune our time management, and develop a more manageable workload. If that sounds like a dream come true to you, then welcome to the Shared Teaching Podcast. Let's share in the teaching to make those dreams a reality. Now here's today's Shared Teaching. Welcome back to the Shared Teaching Podcast. You are listening to episode number 54, and I am your host, Susan, the person behind Shared Teaching. Now, today we are talking about the best read alouds for second grade. So if you are a second grade teacher or you want to tag a second grade team in your school, I would be very much appreciative to get this episode and other episodes of the Shared Teaching Podcast in more teachers' listening ears. So when we're talking about read alouds for second grade, I'm not talking about what I would use for mentor texts or just fun picture book read alouds, but these are meatier read alouds. These are chapter books, short chapter books that you really want to get your kids excited about reading. And so you're going to read it to them and kind of give them a little teaser of other books that are in the series or other books by the same authors. Because there's nothing better than to read the first book of a series and then have your kids in your classroom begging for more. So hopefully sometime this school year, you're going to take 10 to 15 minutes somewhere in your school day. I prefer the very end of the day to share a chapter read aloud with your students. Now, even the noisiest classes tend to sit up and listen for this very precious time of day. So I have looked in a lot of different teacher Facebook groups for you. And these books come recommended over and over by multiple different teachers in second grade groups. So hopefully you agree and you find some good ones here. Now, just a disclosure, I am an affiliate of bookshop.org, which is kind of similar to Amazon, as in it's an online marketplace, but they cater to books. And even more importantly, they help local independent bookstores stay alive amid the big box retailers and online marketplaces. So bookshop.org, if you go to my blog post and you find this article of read alouds, I have linked to bookshop.org, and it helps support a local independent bookstore. And the cool thing is you can choose your favorite local bookstore to support when you make your purchases, and you can get the books directly from them if they have them in stock. Very cool place. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first book I want to recommend is The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate DiCamillo. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering any names, but this is recommended as one of the best read alouds for second grade. And year after year, students fall in love with this tale of a rabbit as he goes on his miraculous journey. The second read aloud is Little House in the Big Woods, which is the real story written by Laura Ingalls Wilder herself about how she's growing up in pioneer days. And students really love to hear about this firsthand account of life back in the 1800s, specifically 1871. Now, a little caution with this book. Some people, in reading some of the reviews I've found online, do say that they found some parts of the book to have kind of a racial undertone, and that is probably par for the course in the 1800s. But just so you know, I always recommend reading a book first before you read it with your students to make sure that it's been vetted, you deem it appropriate, and you feel comfortable sharing. There's nothing worse than getting to a book and then all of a sudden you're right in the middle of reading and you realize where the book's heading, or there's sentences coming up that you're really not comfortable reading aloud to a group of children. Even if other teachers have recommended it, please make sure you read the books first. The next book on the list is The One and Only Ivan, written by Catherine Applegate. The One and Only Ivan is a story about Ivan, who's a gorilla, and he lives in captivity, and he makes an unexpected friendship. And this story is a favorite classroom story, and it touches on animal cruelty and animal rights. So it's a good jumping off point for introducing those hard topics to your second grade students. Up next is The Wild Robot. The Wild Robot by Peter Brown is about Roz the robot who discovers she is alone on a remote wild island and must learn how to adapt to survive. This book also has a small little war in it, and some people are a little off-put by this in the book, but again, remember, read it yourself first, make your own judgments, and then you decide. Lots of other teachers have recommended this book. I personally haven't read it to my class or read it yet, so just take that word of advice. Always preview first. Okay, next up, this is the first book in a series, and it's called My Weird School. And episode book number 1 is Miss Daisy is Crazy, and it's written by Dan Gutman. And like I said, it's the first book in a series, so it's a really good way to tease a series to get your readers interested in reading more. And you're going to follow the adventures of Miss Daisy, a second grade teacher, and the students when the school principal challenges them to read 1,000,000 books. How fun is that? Okay, next up is The World According to Humphrey. This is written by Betty G. Burney, and it's about Humphrey, which is a pet class hamster, and he tells his point of view about sleeping over at different students' homes each weekend. This would be a really great chapter book if you have a class pet and you're thinking about introducing who can take care of him over the weekend, or just a fun book to read in general. Okay, next is an oldie but goodie, Charlotte's Web. So what Read Aloud list would be complete without me talking about the classic Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. Wilbur the pig becomes friends with Charlotte the spider, who tries to save him from the unfortunate fate of being a pig on a farm. And the best thing about Charlotte's Web is you can read the book and then watch the movie as a fun surprise when you finish reading the book, and then the students can compare the two. Next is one of my class favorites, also one of my childhood favorites, The Boxcar Children by Gertrude Chandler Warner. The Boxcar Children is also a chapter book series, so you can always tease the first one and then leave the rest for their students to want to pick up and try to read. And it tells the tale of brothers and sisters who are orphaned and live in a boxcar. I always found this particularly engaging to read when I was a young kid, and I love having it in the classroom now. Next is my friend's favorite book for her class, Goonie Bird Green. She reads it every year to her class, and they just love it. And Goonie Bird Green is by Lois Lowry, and it's about a second grader named Goonie Bird who joins a new school and stands out for her unusual lunches and fashion sense. Goonie Bird doesn't mind standing out, and her storytelling is no different. Okay, next is another favorite, The Doll People by Anne M. Martin. This is another one, oldie but goodie, and it's the same author that wrote the Babysitter's Club series, which was my absolute favorite when I was a young girl. The Doll People is a story about a family of dolls that come to life when humans aren't around, and is filled with adventures and mysteries that will keep your students guessing. Okay, which brings us to another classic, The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. This is another fond memory from my childhood, and your students, just like I, will love learning about Ralph the Mouse trying to ride a toy motorcycle owned by Keith, which is a young boy living in the same house as Ralph, and you can see what adventures they get up to in that book. My Father's Dragon by Ruth Stiles Gannett is another recommended favorite by many second grade teachers, and it's about a boy named Elmer that dreams he's able to fly, and then he goes on an adventure to free a captive dragon that he hears will give the person that frees him a free ride. Last but not least is the fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. You can't go wrong with this author, and it's a best read aloud and a second grade fan favorite. It's full of cliffhangers and action that makes this a fantastic read aloud for students. I'm sure this is not an all-comprehensive list of books, but it will give you a really great start for reading to your second grade. Now, did I forget any? Leave me a comment, let me know, and of course,
bye for now. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Leave a review.
And I'll see you next week. If you've loved this show, then join me in sharing the teaching,
Hitting that subscribe button,
and leaving us a review on
iTunes,
so we can be found by more teachers like you who are ready to start sharing the workload. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Find new episodes each week on sharedteaching.com. Thanks for listening to the Shared Teaching Podcast. Okay, the next book on my list is The One and Only Ivan. Now, The One and Only Ivan is written by Catherine Applegate, and it's not a true story. It's a story. These are not all true stories. These are all made up stories. But it's a story about Ivan, a gorilla, who lives in the I don't even know. Where does he live? Alouds for second grade. So if you're a second grade teacher, I hope you're listening, and share and tag your classmates, or not your classmates, your teammates,